He's got one foot in the frying pan and one in the pressure cooker. Believe me, as a bowler, I know that right about now, your bladder feels like an overstuffed vacuum cleaner bag, and your butt is kind of like an about-to-explode bratwurst.
Hey, do you mind? I wasn't talking when you were bowling.
Was I talking out loud?
Welcome to Munsons at the Movies. My name is Kyle. I will once again be your host, joined by the rest of the Munsons. Want to give them a wide berth.
He's what is called a born loser. A real Munson.
And talk a little bit about what's going on in their worlds. We'll start this time with Case.
Kyle, I think you or James were the one that turned me on to a movie that got me thinking about actors and actors that have memorable deaths. When I was a kid, if I saw a memorable death by one of these actors, I just assumed they were dead in real life. Because I was watching the Predator movies lately because of the movie Prey that you guys were saying how good it was, which it was. Mm-hmm. Anytime I see Carl Weathers, I'm always like, he died because of both Rocky IV and the Predator.
Oh, yeah. And he dies hard in both of those.
Yeah. And Happy Gilmore.
I must break you.
Yeah, Happy Gilmore is a funny one, but the other two is like very dramatic.
I just feel bad because I'm sitting over laughing at Chubbs dying from falling out a window because he saw an alligator.
Because he got a gift. Yeah.
You killed the golf legend.
Rigby.
The time this episode airs, it'll be football season officially. It'll also still be a heat wave in Southern California. We're getting it bad right now, but considering we have pretty good weather all year round, we got to suffer sometimes, right?
I don't want to hear it. As a Minnesotan, I need to address the fact that I am no longer aware that professional sports exist. This is all news to me, Rigby.
Yeah.
Well, James, speaking of.
Unfortunately, I had to miss last time. Pretty hectic life at the moment. I got, obviously, the brand new baby, Kristen Shaw Jr., and out of nowhere, we had a major mold issue at my house. So I've been like semi-homeless, semi-traveling gypsy. And then grad school, final semester started up. So it's been a little hectic, but that brings me to this point. It has exponentially increased the amount of hair that's been falling out of my head. And so I will say it on this recording, but I will deny it later if it works. But the amount of PEDs I am taking to maintain my hair is remarkable. And if it works, I'm going to pretend it's genetics and I wasn't doing it. But at the moment, I'm taking like a Magic Johnson cocktail of vitamins to keep this shit together.
The rest of us are getting gray hair. The hair is just falling out of your head. Not great.
I had grays for a little while, but I get them like poly walnuts, like on the side. And since I rock a fade, you can't really see them.
Me too.
But the crown was starting to form. And so when I inevitably have like beautiful Keanu hair, I'm going to pretend that I didn't take any of the drugs I'm currently taking.
Hey, I think it makes baseball better, so I can only imagine what it's doing for you.
Bro, and the slugging percentage I have in softball has skyrocketed.
I'm here to remind everybody the saga of our Kristen Shaw episode. Craig and I got into watching a lot of Last Man on Earth, and I finished it the other night. Finally got to the end of season 4, episode 18. I ended up watching a Zoom with all of them during COVID, which is hilarious years later.
Very ironic.
Literally, like, Will Forte, you were so prophetic for writing this back then. And I'm so angry I never got to see what happened after they ran into all of the people and the orange trees and the goats. So Sam Phillips was supposed to be here with us as our guest. He was previously with us for the Dakota Fanning episode, and he unfortunately had to back out about 2 days before recording. Family stuff got in the way. He desperately wanted to be here. He told me via text that he rewatched all of the Underworld movies and feels like a waste that he watched all of those and couldn't talk about them. But such is the reality of adult scheduling. So we will not have Sam with us. It's just the 4 of us, but we'll have ourselves a great conversation regardless. All right, birthdays, September 8th. Rigby, what do we got?
First up, Mr. David Arquette, best known as Officer Doofy in Scary Movie.
That's sad that he's best known as that.
He's got to be like 60. I'll go 60.
The star of Eight-Legged Freaks has to be 54.
I'm going to split the middle, 58.
You all overshot on this one. He's turning 51.
Oh, sorry, David.
Wow.
I was surprised at because Scream was almost 30 years ago. Scream was 96. So that was 26 years ago.
Oh, so he was young when that.
Yeah, the fact that he did that when he would have been 25 is really impressive.
Okay, sorry, David. Our man.
Next up, Martin Freeman got a quite the resume for himself in the Sherlock Holmes movies, the Hobbit movies, as well as some Marvel pictures, and I find him to be very talented. He's also in the British version of The Office.
Also in that Australian movie we watched a couple years ago, James, that we really like. What was it called?
Cargo.
Yeah, he's excellent in that movie.
Yeah, that movie rocked.
He's a good actor. I like him.
Was he in a season of Fargo?
Yeah, he was in the first one of Fargo.
Okay.
He played Lester Nygaard.
He'll be in the upcoming Black Panther film because he plays a role in the Black Panther universe. So that'll be fun too.
Oh yeah, he's the colonizer. Or at least that's the joke they make at his expense. He's like a good dude.
I'm gonna think Martin's probably in his 40s, so I'm gonna say 44.
55.
48.
He's also turning 51.
Hey.
Oh, James wins.
Trick question.
So James, you get that one. Someone who's seemingly been around a long time.
Yeah.
Put in quite a career for himself. So yeah, 51 is got a good thing going. Last up, someone who's pretty much disappeared from the spotlight, Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
ATT.
Known best for his role as one of the sons in Home Improvement. I did some research, and it looked like in 2021, someone snapped a picture of him walking his dogs, and that was the first time he'd been really seen in public in almost 10 years. So he's really not a part of Hollywood anymore, and he's really kind of disappeared from the spotlight.
He probably made that young actor money and said, fuck it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he was a heartthrob of all heartthrobs for young girls our age. I think he was like the guy growing up.
36.
He's got to be our age. I bet he's like 2 years older than us, James. I'm going to say he's 35.
I bet he was younger looking than he was when he filmed. I'm going 38.
Oh, James snuck in at the last second. He's turning 41.
Whoa.
Oh, wow.
Dude, okay, so he's got a baby face.
Oh, he was young Simba in The Lion King, too. Things I did not know till this moment.
Yes, he was in The Lion King. That's it. Happy birthday to all those fools.
We're here at episode 70. We are collecting Social Security and doing another episode. The actors that we threw onto the wheel for episode 70 were Claire Forlani, James McAvoy, Bill Pullman, Natalie Portman, and none of those matter, at least until the next time they pop on the wheel, because the wheel chose Michael Sheen. Michael has 96 credits on the screen, also has a long career on the stage. His credits are probably more like 125, 130, 135 when it's all said and done. So the guy's been pretty busy in his time in entertainment. So let's dig in a little bit into his career. But before we do that, we're going to see if we can outstump James with his Fast and Furious trivia.
I'm going to read off 3 facts here. 2 of them are going to be true about the man of the hour, Michael Sheen. And one of them is not going to be true, but will be true about one of the many cast members of the Fast and Furious franchise. Guys are going to guess which one. Here we go. Fact number 1. He was raised in Port Talbot, a Welsh town of less than 36,000 people that has, despite its size, famously produced the actors Richard Burton and Anthony Hopkins. Fact number 2. He's an avid soccer player and had previously been the spokesman for the 1994 World Cup. Fact number 3. In 2021, he announced that he'd be giving all of his future earnings to charities, declaring himself a not-for-profit actor.
Ooh, that's good, James.
You could sneak a Vin Diesel fact past us because that third one is 100% Vin Diesel. And I don't actually know that, but I could see him doing something like that. Or The Rock. One of those two. So that would be my...
Yeah, after they make a cool billion, they're like, I'm going to donate to charity now. Be like, thanks, man. I appreciate all the good you've done.
Michael Sheen's riches aren't in money. It's in women that he dates. So he can't give that away.
The World Cup was in 94. It was in the United States. So I'm going to go with that as the lie because I don't think that would have been him. But I just don't know who from the Fast and Furious franchise would have been the spokesperson. Who was even popular around then?
Ludacris?
Yeah, I'll go Ludacris as the 94 World Cup spokesman.
Everyone knows when they think soccer, they think Ludacris. Don't get that guy on the pitch.
I'll go number 1. I'm going to go and say that Jason Statham was born in a small Welsh town and then moved to England when he was a lad.
So we got 3 guesses for all 3 answers here. So I will start with the first one. So he is from Port Talbot. It's a Welsh town, tiny little town, actually smaller than most of the suburbs that we are from. So I tried to find a city that is the exact same size as this town. It's actually Panama City, Florida, which is the 876th largest city in the U.S. Despite how small it is, a spring break town produced 3 classically trained, very successful actors. I thought that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Fact number 3, he in fact did say he's giving all his future earnings to charities, declaring himself a not-for-profit actor. He is his entire life been heavily involved in philanthropic work and has a net worth that's just over $15 million. And once he got to that level, he made that announcement. And because he's with countless organizations, I won't read them all off, but I was really impressed to see that. And not up to a billionaire, like The Rock, but someone who has realized, like, you know what, I don't think I need more than what I currently have. So this is a fun job. I can live off this and I'll help others out. I really, really respect that move.
Totally.
Sheen actually is a really talented soccer player. He was offered a place on Arsenal's youth team when he was 12, but his family was unwilling to relocate because they weren't well off enough. And, you kind of have to be like a 1 in a million shot to make it there. He later said he was grateful his parents' decision because he doesn't believe he would have been able to play professionally. So that fact is not true about him, but is in fact true about, and I think this is very funny based on whose birthday you were just mentioning, but Zachary Ty Bryan, star of Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, also known as Brad from Home Improvement, Jonathan Taylor Thomas's older brother.
Wow.
That's hilarious.
What a small world.
He's like the douchebag in Tokyo Drift, isn't he? He's like
Yeah, he bets his girlfriend in the opening scene.
That's right.
Good job, James. Case, tell us a little bit about Michael Sheen's Snapshot and box office history.
Obviously does very well on the international rank. When we're comparing him to all actors on international earnings, he ranks 11 out of 70, right? So it's pretty damn good.
Pretty good.
His box office profile is very basic. He is right in the middle of about every topic we have. He does rank 11th in total box office, but when you start plugging in some of those numbers from the Twilight movies, from the Alice in Wonderland, he's crafted a pretty good movie resume to kind of check all boxes and make sure that he does well. He has been in a lot of movies that have lost money, which is offset by that. And I couldn't figure out how much money this movie lost, but James, you'll be happy to know that he was part of the movie Jesus Henry Christ, which only world grossed 20 grand. So we can do some things with 20 grand, right?
With Tony Collette in that one.
Yep.
I'd taken it out of the show notes, so now it has been reintroduced. I love it.
And then if we want to go even further, he was in the movie Gospel of Us, which brought in a cool 32 grand.
We'll talk about that one.
You get a 2006 GMC Terrain SLT, fully loaded. That's a pretty good deal. That's a nice car.
So you're telling me we could actually get a his and hers.
I don't mind it, to be honest.
His star meter's 34th at the time of recording. This one surprised me. 42nd in critic ranking. I would have thought he would have ranked a little bit higher. 24th in fan ranking, 40th and 22nd in 2 different box office rankings, which overall puts him at number 30.
30 of 70.
30 of 70.
Okay.
He's tied with Rebecca Hall, and he is just ahead of William Hurt.
Hurt Daddy. So his Frost Nixon co-star sharing the same box office profile. Got it. And we'll get into it.
Do it.
Thanks, Case.
Yeah, man.
As opposed to like Kristen Shaw, where there wasn't a ton about her early life last week that I got into, there's a lot. Like Michael Sheen's Wikipedia is popping. And so I tried to narrow it down to what I thought was probably the most important stuff here. So number one, as James mentioned, born in Wales, small town, comes from a very theatrical family. In fact, his dad made a living as a Jack Nicholson lookalike, which is an interesting trade to get into. As a theater actor professional, he got into theater when he was pretty young. So he started at the Glamorgan Youth Theatre and National Youth Theatre of Wales. And all that early theater work growing up led him to move to London to train at RADA, which is the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, in 1988, where, he probably got some pretty high-level theater training. and how to be really good at this.
Yeah.
Which led him to actually getting the Laurence Olivier Bursary Award for one of his performances in his second year when he was at RADA. He graduated in 91, but got the award his second year as a sophomore. So was already winning some pretty big time awards while he was still at university.
I think it's probably pretty motivating to get into theater when, one, you come from a theater family, but two, you're from like such a tiny town, and that has produced, like the guy who's been nominated for like 7 Academy Awards and was married to Liz Taylor and then Hannibal Lecter. Like there's not too many famous people, but the ones who are in this craft. I'd be motivated to get into it as well.
Talented guy. 91 was his first theater role, and When She Danced, this kind of led him towards a lot of work on like the London West End, especially here in the 90s, that we'll kind of gloss over a little bit. But in 92, he performed in Romeo Juliet, and he got a Men Theater Award, and one of the critics who attended one of his performances called him in a review the most exciting young actor of his generation.
Wow.
Which is pretty high praise the year after you graduate from university, starting this whole theater world.
And we know how critics love to throw around praise.
Big gig was in Mystery Gallowglass. He played Joe in 3 episodes in 93, which is readily available on YouTube. People can check it out if they want to. He does a couple other TV spots there in the early 90s. The first movie he did, technically the first movie he filmed was Mary Reilly, but the first movie that he was produced and released was Othello.
What is that, Lodovico?
Probably. The spirit of Warren is here to haunt me, so I'm not even going to try it because he would rip.
if it's Othello,
Ludovico?
Yeah, I was going to say, would it be Ludovico?
Great question. Case, if you want to live on the record, you're more than welcome. We can keep that in.
Well, I just want to reach out and have anybody who knows go ahead and email us at munsonsatthemovies@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram, Munsons at the Movies.
Look at Case. He's auditioning for the episode I can't make to be the host. That's what he's doing. But 95 is a big year because this is the year he meets and starts to date Kate Beckinsale. This man, we're going to talk about the females he dated throughout his adult life. But it started with Kate Beckinsale in the mid-90s. They met in a stage production, and they dated for 8 years and had a daughter in 1999.
I wonder what about her caught his eye, because she's fairly plain,
Average.
right? If I'm
Pretty
thinking of the right
average.
person.
Pretty average.
She's up there with Blake Lively as just being really just not attractive at all. Red carpet and stuff.
When I studied abroad, what I could tell you is everyone in London, very fashionable. The level of attractiveness is nowhere close to the common American city. And so I'm assuming Kate Beckinsale looked like a fucking alien over there. I'm assuming it was like an actual angel on Earth.
This disheveled king that is Michael Sheen, just finding all of the females attracted to him. I don't know how he does it.
It goes to show you if you're
Charming.
a charming, nice person, you could go pretty far in life. Being a nice person really helps.
That's true.
And a $15 million net worth.
Well, now.
Well, remember, all these other women came before the net worth. Like, you know what I mean? This is him, exciting young actor of his generation. That's all it was, just promise and potential. We'll reference her again here in a second because that relationship will come back into the fold. But before that, Mary Reilly played Bradshaw in 1996, a movie about Jekyll and Hyde, starring Julia Roberts and John Malkovich. This is his first of many different movies with Stephen Frears, who did all of the Tony Blair appearances we'll talk about shortly. But he's got a smaller role in this one. But it was interesting to watch him work alongside some other heavyweights at that time in the mid-90s. 97, he played a small role as Robbie in the movie Wilde, about Oscar Wilde. So you start to see this trend of him playing characters in films about real-life humans, real people. In this case, he didn't play the title character, but that's going to come up quite a bit. What's really interesting, in 1998, very early in his career, he decided to found a production company for playwrights. Most of the actors we cover will start their production companies 20 to 30 years into their career. I mean, he's 7 years out of graduating and is creating a production company specifically for playwrights.
Pretty cool.
That's some foresight and some business acumen early on. from my understanding, he really wasn't discovered by American audiences until his role in stage production of Amadeus in 1999. That was the first time that American audiences over on the Broadway side actually got a chance to see him, because before he had just been over in London, a lot of on the stage. So this is his kind of first exposure to a much bigger international audience. During this time on the stage, this man had been nominated for 13 separate awards for his theater work and had won 3 of those awards.
Wow.
10 years into his career. So, I mean, he a highly successful stage actor right out of the gate.
Yeah, it makes sense when you think about his acting style. It fits with a lot of the other actors that we've looked at that had prominent stage careers before they took off on the screen.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked about a lot of stuff so far, but a lot of it has been theater and some TV, not a lot of like big time TV movie roles, which is why we haven't done a review yet. The last movie I'll mention here before we get into a review is The Four Feathers from 2002. He played Trench, one of the British officers in the film. If we're going to talk big first major roles, his role as Colin in Heartlands certainly qualifies for the first major role, and James has it.
Heartland came out in, 2001? Is that correct?
01, 02, yeah, somewhere in there. Depends where you look.
And so it has a 60% critic score and a 79% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. For his first major role, he is far and away the star of this movie. He's the main character. He's in almost every single scene. And so that goes a long way to show you that they had a lot of faith in him to put this movie together. Michael Sheen's character kind of leads like a happy, quiet life. He's kind of portrayed as like a simple guy. He owns this tiny little newsstand. Him and his wife live in a tiny little apartment. You know, they have a couple little fish. He plays on a darts team. And then he finds out that his wife is cheating on him with the actual captain of the darts team, who is this cop. And the cop actually pretends that Sheen was abusive to her, because once they get caught, he realizes like, oh, wow, everyone thinks I'm a dick for sleeping with Sheen's wife. So I'm going to make it seem like he's the bad guy. And he kind of kicks him off the team. That's not a spoiler for the movie, because that all kind of happens in like the first 10 minutes. And then from there, the movie is kind of like a really charming kind of road trip movie is how I would describe it. It's like, it is nice and thoughtful, and it's kind of about this man who is enjoying life more. And so the way the plot is going is the darts team is going to this championship that's in Blackpool, which is called like the Vegas of the north of England. And since he wanted to go, but now he's off the team, he decides, you know what, I'm going to go anyway. I'm not going to let this kind of derail my life. And I'm just going to take my moped up there. And on his way there, it's just like he meets more and more characters, and every character he meets is kind of quirky and kind of funny, but still like a good person. And so it's one of those movies that's charming and kind of life affirming. It's got a little bit of a bittersweet ending, but I was pleasantly surprised. Film, maybe it's because it's 2001. It kind of looked a little like grainy. That might have been intentional. And so I was like, oh, this might suck. It's got like a made for TV movie feel to it. And then when it started, it was actually, I think, pretty well done. And I think he did great at it. His like kind of bumbling idiot, but like really likable persona comes through. And you could see that it really undresses a lot of the characters that he meets on the road when they're like, hey, who's this stranger? And it's like, actually, I kind of feel bad for him. Like, let's bring him under our wing and we'll talk with him and hang out. And so I thought it was pretty good.
I agree with you, James. I thought there was a lot of heart to the story. The road trip part was just really cool to watch, because you see him interact with a variety of people that impact him in all these really interesting ways. Like, for example, Mark Strong plays a character and that's like almost had hair. It was crazy.
Yeah, he's not taking the PEDs I'm taking. When I saw it, I was like, oh shit, that's Mark Strong. and you expect him to be, this intimidating guy, because he usually plays an intimidating guy. And he kind of starts off that way. And then he's like, nah, he like treats him like he's like his little brother. He's like, why don't you hang out with us, dude? And like, we'll grab a beer. And
he keeps lying about his relationship, keeps telling people he's happily married when he just found his wife cheating on him.
And yeah, and like they're starting to catch on to that, and they're like, why don't you tell us why you're really here, man? And he's like, oh, well, and the story changes a little bit.
Yep. We talked about Turturro like doing all like these like non-athletic sport movies, and he didn't do a darts movie. By golly, it's an actual darts movie. It's a legitimate darts movie. I didn't know it existed, but it exists.
That is a legit darts tournament involved. It's a main part of the story.
I would highly recommend to people that listen and check out Heartlands. You can get it on Prime, you can get it on Apple TV Plus, or wherever you want to spend your $4 to rent it, but I think it's well worth the watch. Forgot to mention, we're already in the millennium, so we're 2 years into that already. A couple years before our next reviews, which are back-to-back, the big one is in 2003, and this is the Kate Beckinsale tie-in. So Kate Beckinsale is obviously the main focal point of the Underworld films series. At the time was dating Michael Sheen and convinced the director to hire Michael Sheen to be in the movies and play Lucian, which we won't talk much about because we've got a review coming up. The thing I do want to note is that they were dating when they started this project together, Beckinsale and Sheen, and then Beckinsale essentially fell for the director, Len Wiseman, on set.
Which is fucking brutal.
Convinced him to let Sheen join the project, and then started dating the director. Not great, Bob.
And then you're like on set and you see that and you're like, nah, I'm probably just overthinking this. I'm probably,
And they have a 3-year-old at the time too, so it's not like they're just like dating casually. They're parents. They're co-parenting.
Ooh. Probably a little insecure. She's hot. I'm thinking too much into it. And nope, you were right. You were 100% correct.
So
follow your instincts.
That was interesting to read about. But the other piece in 2003 is he starts his 3-movie run with Stephen Frears as Tony Blair, and this time in The Deal, which many would consider kind of his breakout role. But we'll get more into the Tony Blair character in 2 of the other movies when we get there. 2003, again, noting a different type of character that he played. He was in a movie called Bright Young Things. He played Miles, a gay aristocrat, so a very flamboyant character, very different. Like you watched him in Heartlands be like this droll, aimless character, and then flips it completely to play this very flamboyant gay aristocrat in Bright Young Things. So starting to see some of that range come out here. And right after playing the British Prime Minister, Tony Blair. So there's a lot going on here in early 2000. 2003, he's in Timeline. He plays Lord Oliver, a time travel movie with Paul Walker, Neil McDonough, David Thewlis, Gerard Butler, Billy Connolly, a loaded cast for a movie that is not good.
Most time travel movies are not good. Except for Bill and Ted's. That's just one genre that everyone seems to just kind of hit and miss with, I feel like.
I didn't look at the ratings before I watched it, and I was like, I feel like that was a 3, and then I looked at it, and the split's like 40-20, and I was like, oh, I'm right in the sweet spot here.
Vehemently disagree with Rigby's assessment of time travel movies.
Give me some good ones.
Back to the Future, ever heard of it?
I'm talking about recent ones.
Whole movie's about time travel. It's in the title.
Rigby wasn't talking about documentaries. He was talking about recent time travel.
Talking about recent ones. Not obviously Back to the Future set the mold, no pun intended, James, sorry, for time travel movies.
You son of a bitch.
Soon, Rigby.
I need a trigger warning next time.
The whole concept in the movie is they're going back. They're all archaeologists, and they go back just to find and save their professor. And Michael Sheen plays Lord Oliver, basically the main guy in charge of hating the French, and they're supposed to kill the daughter, and it leads to the French uprising. But Gerard Butler's character falls for the young girl who's supposed to die in this pivotal historical moment, and so they're funking with the timeline. That's the concept.
I just learned it's a Michael Crichton book. Didn't know that. And the score was also composed by Jerry Goldsmith, who's done some of the more famous scores in movie history. So it's a shame that they were both associated with that.
And Gerard Butler kicked a guy down a pit. This is perfect. I don't know how this didn't hit.
I mean, it's got a lot of star power in it too. So
it does.
You would think it would hit. He is perfectly fine as Lord Oliver. He is not the problem of this movie. He's sadistic and he's an asshole. So he nails that part. But I think it's just the overall storyline. People were not fans of it on the rating side. 2004, he played Mark in Dirty Filthy Love, kind of his first BAFTA nomination, which, as big as he is in the British scene, you would expect that he's going to get some BAFTA noms along the way. But his first one, a story where he has Tourette's, and anytime somebody plays a character that has Tourette's, you're going to get judged with all the eyes possible. And I have to say, I think he does a solid job. I think he earned his BAFTA nom in this.
Did he go full Tourette's? You never go full Tourette's.
No, he doesn't. This is not the first time he's played a character with like some kind of disorder, which I'll talk about another one. But you get some of that. Again, I don't know how to fully judge those types of roles because I'm like, I don't know. I'm not an expert in this and knowing if it was authentic or not.
It's not Amy Poehler and Deuce Bigalow. I don't want anything to do with it. The greatest Tourette's performance in film history right there.
It's probably easier to judge if you know somebody who has that as opposed to us who knows that performance and like, that's probably what it's like.
I'll say this. I give him a lot of credit for taking on multiple roles just like this. He's shown time and time again in his career he doesn't just play it safe with the types of characters he plays, and he takes bold stabs at characters. And this is definitely one of them, playing a character with Tourette's, because you could turn that into a major caricature and not tell the story authentically. So I'll give him credit. It's got decent reviews as a film too. It's just a TV movie, so it's got that TV movie production. But more dating life updates. He starts dating Lorraine Stewart in 04, a very attractive ballet dancer. Dates her for 6 years, 2004 to 2010. So bouncing back a year plus later from Kate Beckinsale to settle for a gorgeous ballet dancer. Awful. Terrible.
Poor guy.
Really, really awful.
Can't get a break.
It's the accent.
Some guys can't catch a break, I'll tell you what. Charismatic dude. I could see, you see it in his roles, he's probably got a lot of charisma, so he's doing it. Kingdom of Heaven, he played the priest in 2005.
God, I remember this movie being massive, and I couldn't tell you why. Yeah, I have since watched this movie since 2005, and I remember it being very ho-hum.
Yeah.
This didn't stand out at all.
It's a Ridley Scott movie, so it's gonna be big no matter what. And I think it kind of came and went.
Mm-hmm. Liam Neeson, David Thewlis, Ava Green, Martin Sheen. Pretty good cast there.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the last one here before we get into our next review is the title role in Kenneth Williams' Fantabulosa, a role that got him another BAFTA nom, a character that, from my understanding, this is based on a British comedian, I believe, and a very unique mannerism-wise British comedian that he plays.
Interesting.
I started watching it today. Couldn't really get into it. I think it's a BBC production, and the production on YouTube's not great, but searching around, this Kenneth Williams guy is not like a super famous comedian, but unique enough to stand out to where people really dug his style. So, but again, playing another real life character, another biopic. They're playing Tony Blair, Kenneth Williams. He's playing these high profile British personalities in their biopic related features. And he got a BAFTA nom for this too.
That's very cool.
All right, so the sequel to the Underworld film, Underworld Evolution, is our lowest critic score, and Rigby has it.
Yeah, I don't have much, unfortunately. So I didn't watch this because it wasn't streaming anywhere, and I was actually just on his Wikipedia page, and it says he only appears in this via archive footage. Is that right?
Very possible.
So I don't have much review because I guess the scenes that I watched on YouTube were from the first one. So from what I could gather, is he plays a Lycan, which is like a werewolf. $45 million budget, $113 million box office. So pretty good return, and I think the first one probably did the same. I always got these and the Resident Evil movies mixed up. I don't know why.
I was just going to say, because I thought it was the Resident Evil movies, I was like, yeah, you'd have to use archive footage because there's no fucking way I'm getting back on set with that asshole.
It did score a 17 on Rotten Tomatoes based on 104 reviews. The site's consensus says that it's a visual assault on the senses. This vampire werewolf sequel makes a lot of noise and features a heavy-handed, overly convoluted story. Wasn't able to watch the first one and wasn't able to watch this one. He also makes an appearance in the 2009 Underworld, which we'll talk about. Not much. I don't think Sheen really had much in this except for archival footage.
Yeah, he plays a pretty major role in the first one. He's deemed the most feared and ruthless leader ever to rule the Lycan clan and the major instigator of the war between the two species. So he's a shit starter in the first movie, is basically the best way to put it, on the werewolf side. Mm-hmm. But he's also in the Twilight films. Yeah, he's a baddie in this world on the werewolf side.
Yeah, and James, you mentioned that he wouldn't come back to a movie that Len Weissman directed, but I believe the 2009 one, he's the main character in it, and I don't think Len Weissman did that one, so maybe you might not be far mistaken on that premise. If somebody stole Kate Beckinsale from me, I don't know if I'd want to ever talk to him again either, though. So
Depends how big that check is, you know?
Can I tolerate this person for $5 million?
Right.
So this was probably trying to answer maybe the Resident Evil movies.
Yeah, and I mean, this obviously blew up Kate Beckinsale's profile like crazy, being in these movies. It accomplished that, and everybody. Highest critic score bookends the lowest critic score. So the Lucian side of Underworld, that's something that Sheen does get noticed for quite a bit, but highest critic score is probably the one that he probably wants to be known for a little bit more, and that is his role as Tony Blair in The Queen. Now, Sam was supposed to cover this, but since he's not here, I'll step in and give a little bit of a review of this.
Are you going to do this with a English accent?
Will butcher the fuck out of it, so I will not.
Give it a shot.
At university?
No, because as soon as I try, I start wanting to speak like an Australian, and that is very different. So I don't think that's going to work out very well. I'll just embarrass myself with my words, not with my accent. But another BAFTA nom here. So we stockpiling the BAFTA noms in The Queen. For those who haven't seen it, this is a follow-up to The Deal from 2003. So this is 3 years later. Highest critic is because it's got a 97 from critics, a 76 from audiences. So it's a little bit of an audience gap film, but quite beloved on the audience side. And I think most of that's because of Helen Mirren, frankly, in her role as Queen Elizabeth II. So the film follows her character immediately after the death of Princess Diana. So basically it's like 5 minutes of screen time, and then Princess Diana and her lover die in that car crash in Paris. They give you just enough to set up what's going on, and then, shocker, spoiler, Princess Diana doesn't survive that car crash. This movie was nominated for 6 Oscars. It won 1 Oscar, and that was Helen Mirren for Best Actress. It was nominated for Best Picture, so this is a big awards darling film. Sheen plays Tony Blair. As I'm watching the film, I'm not too familiar with Tony Blair's mannerisms. I did a little bit of a Google search, and they look similar, and their mannerisms are pretty alike. I know Sheen took some creative license to it, and I also know that Tony Blair said he'd never watched a full performance all the way through. He might watch clips, but he said it was weird for him to watch himself on screen because I think Sheen does a solid job at it. But it's a huge deal to play the British Prime Minister.
Oh, yeah.
It's like playing the American president in a movie, right? Like that's a big deal unless it's a spoof.
I feel like anytime you're playing a real life character that's still alive, you have to have a little bit of it be your own, or it just seems like you're imitating that person rather than telling the story using that character as a vehicle.
Right. And I think it says so much about his acting talent that he plays this character 3 times. Someone who in Britain is obviously so well known as a prime minister.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, like if somebody plays Clinton or Bush or God forbid Trump, like it comes off as like super gimmicky. Like, you know, because you just don't you're so used to that person, you just don't buy their acting.
Yeah.
And the fact that he has continuously played this role, 3 times over a 7-year span is really, really impressive. It just speaks to his acting ability and his talent.
I agree.
That's one of those rare complimentary typecasting.
Right.
Yes.
And the acting in The Queen is what makes it so good. Whether it's James Cromwell, Helen Mirren, or Sheen. The fact that Sheen is second billed to probably the best performance that year by Helen Mirren, that's what makes the movie great. So he was awesome in this role.
Yeah, for those that haven't seen it, the story highlights how kind of Blair understood the pain the citizens were feeling after it happened, and essentially convinces Queen Elizabeth II, played by Mirren, to make a public appearance and actually give a shit about Princess Diana's passing instead of hiding away in their royal dwelling and pretending like it didn't happen. Which made me think, is Tony Blair / Michael Sheen the villain of this story? Because should Tony Blair just have let them crawl back into their hole and basically watch that whole monarchy just crumble in front of them? Like, would the world be better off had Tony Blair not done that and not consulted her to actually step out and save the royal family's ass on that one. That was something I pondered as I was watching.
Interesting. Never thought of that one.
Kyle, my movie later, we'll be talking about alternate history. So you
Yes.
might be onto something.
Oh, Resistance. I will say the live shots at the end of the movie from the funeral really, really drive home how much Princess Diana is beloved. Like it. And I'm not somebody who gives a shit necessarily about the monarchy and British politics and things like the footage they bring in and how they integrate the actors into that footage. Goes to show how much of an impact that woman made. Because I was what did that happen? 97?
August 97.
Yeah, I was in Tennessee at the time. I was 9. I remember where I was when that went down.
I want to say it was like August 31st or something. So we might be coming up on the 25th anniversary of it right now.
As we're recording this, it's 25 years ago today. Because right now it is August 31st in England.
Yeah.
That's so cool. If you had to ask me, Kyle, do you think this is a 97 film? I don't care enough about the story to say it is, but I will say it's very well crafted and the acting is very good. And Michael Sheen is extraordinary as Tony Blair. So I'm probably more in the 76 audience range, but that's just because it's hard for me to get into this type of story, but I can recognize that it's produced very on a quality level.
Yeah, critics love British monarchy movies.
Mm-hmm. One movie here between our next review, and that is Blood Diamond, a film we mentioned a couple times now, with Djimon Hounsou.
This is his second appearance with Djimon. He was also in Four Feathers with him.
Oh, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Good call on that one. Good throwback. Yeah, he plays a diamond exec. He's not in this movie very much. He's only in a couple scenes. And even the scenes he's in, he doesn't really have many speaking parts. It's just kind of a visual. He just looks like an asshole, to be completely honest. I just can't get past Leo's accent in this one. It's always, it's something.
It's funny, the movie with those two performances, I don't really remember much about Sheen in this, to be honest with you.
Either do I.
He has like 3 scenes, and there's one scene where he's talking in the back of a car with Djimon's character, because they're trying to he's basically trying to negotiate to buy the diamonds so that way they could take it off the market, because they're trying to control price.
I wonder if this was filmed before The Queen. In other words, that his performance in The Queen probably earned him some bigger roles. And since
interesting.
maybe this was filmed before, maybe he just wasn't as big at the time.
Maybe.
That does happen.
That's true.
There's a breakout role, and then you're like, oh, why would they take this side role? It's like, well, I filmed that like 2 years earlier.
Yeah.
A great question, Case. You're very curious. I like it. Well, that's going to take us to the largest audience gap, and for the second week in a row, the two, since I'm picking up an extra review, they just happen to be back to back. It's not planned, but that is the chronological order. So largest audience gap in this case is a movie called Music Within. It's got a huge split, though. It's like the perfect audience gap movie. Audience is 78, critics 33. And I fall right in the middle in the 5. So it's like the perfect audience gap film to review for an actor. Apparently I had seen it before because I hadn't rated it in IMDb. I just didn't remember much of it. Another biopic where Michael Sheen's playing a real character, but he's not the focal point of the story. The focal point of the story is Ron Livingston, who you guys know best from Office Space.
Yeah.
I would imagine. He plays famous Richard Pimentel, who is famous for helping lead the charge of the ADA and helping the country combat the AIDS epidemic, in particular helping the country and like the government and employers enact accessibility changes that help disabled people. He's a big deal in that community because he's one of the main people that led the ADA coming into effect in the 80s. So the whole movie is narrated by Ron Livingston's character, Richard Pimentel. It starts on a really weird tone because it starts with his weird lucky birth after his mom had 7 miscarriages, which is just an interesting tone to start a biopic on. He goes crazy. His dad is Chinese and dies from an unfortunate soy sauce accident with a large can falling from the top of a from the top of a shelf. I can't make this up. It's crazy. Like the first 15 minutes are all about that and like his adolescence. He's also at the time like 39 and is supposed to be playing a high school student who's trying to get into college, and it's hilarious seeing Ron Livingston try to pretend to be a high school student for like just a portion of the movie until he gets into like a military time. That was funny to watch.
Is that done intentionally as like a joke, or were they really trying to pass him off as a high schooler?
No, they were trying to pass him off because most of the movie is about his adult life. So they really didn't do much to change his look and appearance. They didn't get like a younger actor. It was just him at 39 years old playing
he's a guy who has like a chronic 5 o'clock shadow too. So.
He's got a full beard.
Did he put a backwards hat on so he'd look young?
Hello, fellow kids. Steve Buscemi meme. They set this tone early on. Like the first 10 minutes is all of this stuff is early life of him wanting to be a hero. That's like he said he wanted to be as a kid. He wanted to be a hero. He eventually joins the army, and while he's there, he gets injured and gets tinnitus. Do you guys know what tinnitus is?
Yeah.
Like you have the ringing in your ear constantly. Like you're deaf, you can kind of hear people, but you have a constant ringing. So the rest of the story there is him proving himself that he can graduate from college, build a social circle, and be successful because people couldn't do any of those things. He then spearheads this disability rights movement in the U.S. Sheen plays a character named Art Honeyman, who is a high IQ writer who suffers from cerebral palsy. So you could see why I think people should watch this movie, because, again, we talked about him playing a character a few movies ago that had Tourette's. Now he's playing someone with cerebral palsy, and obviously the most famous role I can think of with cerebral palsy would be DDL in My Left Foot, the role that earned him an Oscar in '92.
Yep.
Yeah.
I looked up on the Google, I looked up lists of like best and worst portrayals of cerebral palsy on television, and Sheen showed up on none of them.
Interesting.
None of them. Not good or bad.
But there are a list.
There are lists.
There are lists.
He's got the mannerisms of it. I think he does fine. You know, having seen DDL and My Left Foot, it's hard to compare against those two, but I think Michael Sheen's pretty good in that. I could at risk of being judged by someone listening from that community and telling me I'm vastly wrong. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. The reviews are all over the place with this movie, right? And so I was trying to figure out like why. I read a lot of reviews. This is probably the most reviews I've ever read for a movie I've reviewed before. And the gist I got was that critics felt like it was a well-intentioned TV movie that was just low on drama, and it's trying to balance his life and make it more dramatic than it actually was, and instead it is sacrificing telling the story of the actual impact that he made in the lives of disabled folks. So I think that's why this movie has such a gap. It probably would have been a lot better as just a documentary instead of trying to dramatize. His life is just not that dramatic. They try to make it that way, but it really falls flat in that area. That's, again, bold choice to play someone with cerebral palsy because you know it's got to be spot on, otherwise you're going to get all the hate mail from people.
Yeah.
Especially in a story of somebody who played such an integral role in creating access for folks with disability.
I think performers had a lot more creative liberty in 2007 than they do now.
They do. I agree.
He probably couldn't have taken the same approach to that role as he would now.
He's a very horny character in this movie. His character is talking to waitresses and it's like, sit on my lap and I'll take you for a ride.
I'm actually going to watch this. You talked me into it.
Yeah, give it a scope. I think you'll probably fall right in the middle like I did.
Yeah.
I think it's worth watching, but they could have done it a lot better. 2008, this is the biggie. Frost Nixon. He plays David Frost, a movie with Rebecca Hall and Sam Rockwell, in a role that got them a SAG Ensemble nomination.
Yeah, and this is my favorite role of his. Job by he and Frank Langella in this is just unbelievable. And again, it's based off a play, so you can tell that they've sunk himself into this role for so long that it just kind of comes easy for him. Huge fan of this movie. Love his performance in it. The supporting cast is awesome too. Sam Rockwell, Oliver Platt, and obviously Kevin Bacon as Nixon's right-hand man. All just fantastic. Can't say enough about this movie.
Wholeheartedly agree. Love the movie, and it all comes down to him and Langella and that back and forth as their relationship grows. It's really fascinating to watch.
Where I think this movie really turns is when Sheen's portrayal of David Frost sort of turns into this sarcastic, entertainment celebrity style journalist. He becomes super focused and ultimately wins the battle of wits between Nixon at the end with that awesome scene where he gets Nixon to admit, it's not illegal if the president does it, which obviously ended, Nixon's, sort of comeback tour.
I've seen this movie before when we did the Rockwell episode, but I didn't know of this story before this movie. And what I found so fascinating is how they portrayed how kind of, even though he was off-putting, how like charming and guy's guy Nixon was, to the point where like it threw them off their game when they first met him. And they're like, oh shit, like he's he's not being this evil person we thought he was. He's like just like a dude hanging out, and then he's like, I'm not gonna fucking shake his hand. Like, I love that line. Again, just very impressed with this movie for someone who knew nothing of the history of it.
Well, the last Underworld check he got was in 2009. I'm kidding. He's probably gotten checks since then, but he did the third Underworld Rise of the Lycans movie in 2009 there. If he's going to be the king of the Lycans, I'm sure he played a big role in that one as well. But a movie I know Rigby really enjoys is 2009's The Damned United. He plays another real-life person, Brian Clough.
Yeah, this story is fascinating. Obviously, he's a real-life soccer coach, like you mentioned, from the 70s. He led a small team called Derby County to prominence, and then he took over as coach for a much larger team called Leeds United, and it could not have gone worse. It was disastrous, and he insulted the players, and nobody wanted him there. And so it's kind of like this Shakespearean sort of downfall where this made this decision to move to higher pasture, and it backfired tremendously. But a great movie. Brian Clough's a pretty big deal in Britain if you haven't heard of him.
Yep, I never heard of it or his story until I watched this movie, and I could tell. I was like, oh, that's why this movie has like an 80+ rating from critics. Like, this is a pretty beloved story culturally. Good, cool cast too. Jim Broadbent, Timothy Spall, Cole Meany. I mean, it's a pretty solid cast alongside him too. 2009 is when he enters. So he exits the Underworld series and enters the Twilight Saga in New Moon as Aro alongside Dakota Fanning. So this would have been the one Dakota Fanning crossover for Sam if he had made his return.
Oh, yeah.
So finishing off the 2000s, I thought this shocked me when I looked this up. In 2009, he was named GQ's Actor of the Year, and he was given the BAFTA for British Artist of the Year in 2010. Like, that's how big he was at the end of the 2000s. I was like, holy shit. How do I not know more about this guy if this dude was owning the 2000s like this?
Yeah.
I guess I'm not British, so, I wasn't into the British scene then, but still, I mean, that's just a lot of really big projects there.
But he's definitely in the Order of the British Empire.
2009. Yep.
There you go. Yep.
Same year. Big year. 2009. That's like his coup de grace. That's where you can't get any bigger for him. 2010 though, one of my favorite roles that I watched, and I've watched a lot with him, Unthinkable. He plays Steven, a role that Cam talked about and recommended to us at the end of the last episode. As you guys got to check out Unthinkable, this paced movie with Samuel L. Jackson, and he's a terrorist who just won't tell them where the bombs are. And let me tell you, if you're not prepared for the torture scenes, boy, they will kick you straight in the nuts.
I saw your text. I was like, all right, in between watching the baby and doing mold shit, and I was like, let me just throw this on. I'm sitting there feeding my 3.5-month-old daughter, and all of a sudden Samuel L. Jackson whips out a scalpel and takes it to this dude's nutsack. And I was like, you know what, I'll just put the baby down. We don't got to watch this now. It's like, you can watch this later.
Sheen's wife is standing in front, and Samuel just decides to slit her throat right in front of him. Like, oh, okay.
I got shit to do. We don't got to do this now. Yeah. I kind of knew what they were going for once the torture scenes start, and the torture scene literally lasts the whole movie. So if you're not prepared for that, that is what's going to happen. But I did like Sheen's kind of portrayal of this fundamentalist, like he's a true believer in the cause, and like even when they think he's going to crack, it's just him getting to the next step of his terrorism beliefs.
Yeah, it's pretty hardcore, especially to the scene at the end where Samuel is about to basically murder 2 children because they can't get the door open because he thinks there's more than 3 bombs, and you're just like, holy shit, man, this movie is intense. He sells it. Give him credit, he sells it. And stepping back from the torture over to maybe a different kind of torture, Alice in Wonderland, he plays the White Rabbit. I'm kidding. That's torture. Unless you hate Johnny Depp, then maybe it is torture. That's the Mad Hatter, but he plays the White Rabbit in 2 Alice in Wonderland films here.
This movie puts him in rare air in our box office grouping, as this was a $1 billion earner.
What?
Yep. 1.03 billion with a B.
Just crossed.
This Tim Burton?
I think so.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Johnny Depp's kind of the indicator on that one.
Is Johnny Depp quirky and unbearable? Because that's usually his go-to for me now.
To be fair, that's kind of the concept of the Mad Hatter, so he's probably a good hire for that. But yeah.
I mean, I get it worked here. It didn't work in Willy Wonka.
And then the third iteration of Tony Blair in The Special Relationship, 2010, a role that got him an Emmy nomination this time.
He's great, but I got to give some credit to Dennis Quaid in this. He's awesome as Bill Clinton.
You've referenced him as Clinton before, too. So I didn't realize it was from this movie. Yeah,
so this is an HBO movie, as you mentioned, sort of. But for some reason, I always thought that Blair's relationship with Bush was referred to as a special relationship, but I guess it was Clinton's too. But either way, this movie it portrays the relationship between 97 and 2001, which was Clinton's second term. Different scenarios that they have to interact, whether it's the war in Northern Ireland, the war in Kosovo, President Clinton's impeachment. It just shows how they, the special allied relationship that our two countries have.
How is Quaid's Clinton accent?
I didn't think he was that bad. And Hope Davis, I don't know if you know who that is. She played Hillary. She's pretty good too.
I could see that. Yeah, she was on the wheel like in the first 5 episodes a long time ago.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. That was way back. A little bit more dating. T here. He dated Rachel McAdams starting in 2010 through 2013, and we'll talk about a movie here in a second they were in together. So I'm gonna guess that they met set for Midnight. That would make sense.
One of my first celebrity crushes. I don't know if this adds points to his score or takes him away, but I am jealous.
Probably adds.
I think it's ad, but I got to get over my jealousy first.
Game, respect game, James. Come on.
Yeah.
30 Rock. 4 episodes of that. Played Wesley in 2010.
Not just Wesley. His name is Wesley Snipes in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's a love interest of Liz.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. The same year, he's in Tron Legacy as Castor/Zeus. He doesn't have a huge role in this, but I'll tell you, when he gets on screen, he steals the scene, man. His character flips, and then he gets screwed over by the end of the movie. But for a movie that's kind of dull at times, when he steps on screen, he's a very flamboyant, static character. And again, another one of those roles where I watched, I was like, man, he stole every second he had on screen. Michael Sheen was the focal point. Not necessarily impressed with the movie, but impressed with his character. Seems like every actor we cover has one Woody Allen movie, and in his case, it was Midnight in Paris. He plays Paul, the know-it-all guide who Rachel McAdams' character falls for by the end of the film.
He's hilarious in this.
How ironic.
You're right. He's a seductive master in this movie and in real life, right? He's hilarious in this because Owen Wilson's character is like miserable, and he's in Paris on this vacation with his wife's family, and this guy Paul is like this sort of know-it-all like tour guide, and he acts like he basically just tries to impress Rachel McAdams with all these like history anecdotes in Paris and stuff, and he's not even right half the time about it.
No.
He just tries to act smart.
No, have you seen it, Case?
No, but he's describing the actions I would take.
Yeah.
That's why I'm laughing.
It comes off as very, very annoying, but very, very hilarious. So Michael Sheen is perfect for this role.
So there's a time travel element to this, Rigby, to kind of refute your point from earlier, where every night at midnight, Owen Wilson meets at a certain place in Paris, and he gets picked up in a car, and he's taken back to the 1920s. And he meets Ernest Hemingway, the Fitzgeralds, he meets all of these, Picasso. He meets all these famous people, and Corey Stoll plays Ernest Hemingway, and his character is so much fun. But that's the dynamic. He'll come back from a night in Midnight in Paris, and he's out on this tour, and Michael Sheen's trying to tell this story and about who he dated, and he's talking about Picasso, and Owen Wilson's like, no, actually, that's of a sister of Picasso. I believe he actually was painting her because he was angry at his ex at the time. Like all like normal shit that historians wouldn't know. He's like telling Michael Sheen he's wrong, but no one else knows that he's going back in time.
Yeah.
So they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, why are you upstaging our guide?
It's a really good movie.
It's so funny.
I always thought Owen Wilson was kind of miscast in this, but I think on rewatch, I think he's pretty good for it.
Yeah,
really
he's
is.
like a hopeless romantic. I
Yep.
think it fits for him. Whimsical.
Yep.
Case, you got to watch Midnight in Paris at one point. That's your homework. I think you'd enjoy it.
As you guys are talking about it, it does sound familiar to me.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
And then the last couple things before our last review is the other Twilight movie, and he did an episode of Doctor Who, which I don't think we've covered anybody else up through 70 episodes. It's been on Doctor Who, maybe one other point, but that's like the big longest running show in entertainment history, if I'm not mistaken. But largest critic gap, saving the best for last year case, is Resistance from 2011.
Resistance is a 2011, I would call it a alternative dramatic anti-war movie. It's based on the premise of what if Germany had succeeded in their invasions of England and then continue to move throughout the rest of Europe. First of all, this is one of the most simple plots of a movie that we've covered. If you look it up on Wikipedia, the summary of the movie is 4 paragraphs. And the movie is pretty simple as well. The gist of it is these 4 women wake up in their village and all the men have left. And we're really never told why. We just know that they're gone. And shortly after them leaving, maybe a week or 2 after they've left, a small detachment of the German army comes to their village, and they're like their farming village, looking for something that we eventually find out is it's either a map or a painting. They kind of go in between the two of them. I enjoyed watching this movie, but it required me to pay quite a bit of attention because a lot of the movie, they're speaking either German or Welsh, right? And then they kind of bring the audience back into it by going into English. And so you're really having to pay quite a bit of attention to keep things going. It's not a major Michael Sheen role, which is deceptive because he's second or third build in this movie. And yet, what does he have? 4 scenes, Kyle?
Yeah, he's not on much. I think he's a name grab at this point because he's so big.
And he plays his role well, right? And essentially what he is he's a handler of a spy for the resistance. And so he's kind of directing this young man from a I'm assuming it's the town over or the next town, whatever, to spy on the village, spy on the German army as they're advancing, and then give him intelligence that he can bring to the larger resistance. I found this to be a very well-told story, and I enjoyed it. My only complaint about this movie is that I decided I was going to be watching it as I was filling in the box office information on our boy Michael Sheen. And so I typed into my YouTube TV search, Resistance, and I started watching a movie with Jesse Eisenberg for about 35 minutes
Yes.
while I was waiting for Michael Sheen to show up.
It's another like Nazi movie, isn't it?
It's another Nazi movie.
Yep.
Couldn't find the budget for this movie, so I had to do some homework. And then I found this article, and it summarized the movie in the first paragraph. And I realized that I had been watching the wrong movie for about 30 minutes.
Dude, brutal.
It was.
Was it good? Was the 30 minutes of the other one better?
No,
No. Okay.
I did not enjoy the other movie. But I will say this article is fascinating because what I found out was that this is based on a book that a small group of people were so impassioned about that they took it upon themselves to get this movie made. And 75% of this budget, which is $3.2 million, which is nothing, came from 85 different private investors with sums ranging from $8,000 to $265,000. The main producers of this movie basically they approached the author of the book and he's like, yeah, if you can raise $500,000, I'll let you guys be producers on this film. And they're like, got you. So then they went and raised $3.2 million. I found out, and it resonated with me after watching the movie, is that because this movie was privately funded, the director and the guy who wrote the book, they were able to protect their vision of this movie and not have to worry about what studios thought. They didn't have to worry about what major investors were thinking. So from the roots up, this was really a passion project. And I looked for some interviews with Sheen regarding this role, and I couldn't find any. But I'd be curious to know what drew him to play this role. To me, it was a really well-crafted movie and a well-told story, and it makes 100% sense after learning that this movie was basically privately fundraised by fans of this book and of this story. It's not a movie I would typically like, and enjoyed finding out more about this particular film.
You're on the critic's side. This is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, definitely.
On the critic's side of the gap.
You know, a Michael Sheen fan may not have liked it if he was only in the movie for a total of 5 minutes. But other than that, I don't know why fans would have thought poorly of this movie.
16% from fans. Pretty low.
It's incredibly low. Yeah. So I'm definitely on the side of the critics, and I enjoyed it.
I'm glad you found value in it, Case.
Yeah, man.
Well, we're going to crush the last 11 years, which are busy. I will say he hasn't slowed down much in the last 11 years, now that we're through our reviews. So first and foremost, the last Twilight movie, Breaking Dawn Part 2 in 2012. And then the project we mentioned very early in the episode, which was The Gospel of Us. He plays the teacher, which from my understanding, he did a 72-hour live play in his town. And this was the cinematic recreation of that particular play that they did, which involved starting on the beach and being crucified, essentially. I saw a Graham Norton interview where he talked about this, and it said he was a little worried about what it would come out as because it's not a documentary, it's a dramatic reinterpretation of that 72-hour play throughout the whole community. So I thought that was an interesting pet project for him to take on there in the early 2010s.
Yeah.
But the big TV show there, the one that kind of climbs to the top of his IMDb, is his role as Dr. Masters in Masters of Sex from 2013 to 2016. He was in 46 episodes alongside Lizzie Kaplan and Allison Janney, who we've covered, and this seems to be the show that he's most known for.
Yeah, this is a fun show. I remember watching the first season back in 2013, and it's basically he plays a doctor who is thought of to like have sort of sparked the sexual revolution. And yeah, he and Lizzie Kaplan are awesome in this show.
Around this time is where he really starts to ramp up his charity work. And I found a really funny picture. So he actually, again, is a very talented soccer player. And there is a charity called Soccer Aid, which is an annual charity event. It's like Celebrity Soccer Match that takes place at Wembley, one of the biggest stadiums in England. And it's actually raised like $38 million in aid for UNICEF.
Wow.
But it's him and Mike Myers, and they're not half-assing it. They are really playing hard against each other. It's a pretty funny photo.
I remember watching the movie Professor Marston and the Wonder Women about that Professor Marston and how all the early work he did on sexuality led to why Wonder Woman was created the way it was created. Did they ever cross the streams without those two individuals that in the show Masters of Sex? Do you know?
No, I don't think they did. This was certainly it's based on the real life of Masters and Johnson, but I don't think there's a massive crossover. I think these guys are after.
Okay, understood.
Masters of Sex, I believe, begins in like the mid 50s when America was still pretty prude, I would say.
Yeah.
And I think their teachers, I want to say they were at like somewhere in the Midwest. I can't remember. University of Chicago, maybe.
Washington University,
so St. Louis.
Yep.
Yeah, and they revolutionized independent sexual thinking in the United States. Those two are thought of as like being the founders of the sexual revolution in the United States in the mid-50s.
Adventurer Curse of the Midas Box played Charity, a role alongside Lena Headey.
When I was doing my research, I found a article from Wales Online. The title is, "Will the Midas Box spell box office gold for 3 Welsh actors?" And the short answer is absolutely not, because this movie was a colossal bomb. It was budgeted for $15 million, and it pulled in $128,000, and only $6,000 in the United States box office. So,
Jeez.
in the United States, this movie did not do well. A reviewer, Gabe Toro, talked about this in his article, and basically what he indicated was that there were a group of European investors that were trying to answer the Harry Potter franchise, and they were trying to create a franchise of their own, and they thought this would be the movie, so they just spent money, just hand over fist, trying to create the next franchise. Just too many creative influences guiding the project, and it ended up really sucking.
Stop trying to make fetch happen. That's what I say.
Yeah.
Sometimes you hear these like investment strategies, and even though, these are like wildly successful people with a ton of money, you just like, if I was in that room, I'd be like, this is a stupid idea. Like,
Yeah.
you think you're going to beat Harry Potter? It's like more sold books than the Bible. You think you're going to beat that? Like, come on.
Another dating anecdote.
Good grief.
He's no longer with Rachel McAdams in 2013. He starts dating Sarah Silverman, of all people, from 2014 to 2018. That is not who I would think was going to be on the Michael Sheen bingo card for dating, but by golly, it was.
She rules, man.
I know.
She's hilarious. She's sexy.
Yeah, I'm a fan of hers for sure.
Witty. She's the best.
There's an awkward interview with him and Jimmy Kimmel where they're talking about her because Jimmy Kimmel used to date her too.
Yeah.
And so he's asking like, oh, did you meet her parents? Like asking just really awkward questions that I don't think an ex should ask a guy on an interview. But hey, bravo to Michael Sheen for doing it with grace.
Yeah, man.
What did he do to fuck up with Rachel McAdams? That's the real question.
Maybe Rachel McAdams got a little aggressive and a little crazy after doing the third season of True Detective.
That was the worst season.
And it just threw him for a loop. Maybe. I don't know. I'm grasping at straws, boys.
If she's crazy, then I'm crazy. That's fine.
All right. So 7 Days in Hell. Have you guys seen 7 Days in Hell? The HBO mockumentary?
It's fantastic.
It's so good.
I love it.
I'd never seen it before. It's 40 minutes long, and it's about an epic tennis match. He plays Caspian, a very creepy British commentator, TV host, and he's so good at it. It's honestly off-putting.
Sandberg's and the whole project follows this formula, but he's got a great way of just kind of in cruise control telling a story normally, and then it just gets completely fever dream absurd for about 30 seconds.
Yes.
And then it's back to normal like nothing happened. And the whole project feels that way. It's great.
That scene with the streakers where there's a female streaker that comes out there to the court and Andy Samberg proceeds to have sex with her for a long time. And then a male streaker comes out and he proceeds to have sex with him for a while. And then they both come out and he proceeds to have a threesome with both of them on the court.
That's great. That's awesome.
Isn't his opponent getting annoyed and frustrated, trying to get the upper F to do something? Yeah.
But I'm telling you, Michael Sheen plays this creepy fucking Brit who is just all over the characters, and it's off-putting. He's so good at it. I hate it. Shout out to Sheen on that. Nocturnal Animals 2016, alongside Laura Linney, plays Carlos. I don't remember his role in the slightest.
I don't either, and that's probably because the other performances in this movie are so good.
Michael Shannon, fucking Aaron Taylor Johnson, Amy Adams.
Yeah.
Everybody else is so good. So he and Laura Linney are very much like side characters in this story. But Passengers, he's pretty much third billed as Arthur, the robot, who meets and greets Chris Pratt once he's found out he woke up way, way too early on this interstellar flight, and then proceeds to wake up Jennifer Lawrence.
Was his character kind of an ode to the bartender in The Shining?
Not a bad point.
I don't know. Probably. See the thread?
His character in Passengers, it's kind of scary, right? You don't know it, but you feel like it's behind something. And I always felt that same way with the bartender in The Shining.
He's got the red coat like Lloyd does in The Shining as well.
Yep.
It's a great point.
I've only seen Passengers once, and I don't really recall liking it.
I don't think a lot of people liked it.
I think it is fair to say that is definitely an ode to Lloyd in The Shining as the ghost bartender, basically.
Yeah, it was a movie that had a lot of hype, huge budget, and marketing put behind it. I don't think it met anybody's expectations, unfortunately.
Yep.
No.
The movie is not bad because of Michael Sheen. He's perfectly competent role as the robot. So following up 7 Days in Hell with just ridiculousness, then you have Michael Bolton's Big Sexy Valentine's Day special with Maya Rudolph, which has even more ridiculousness. And this is the character that I was referencing last week. I was trying to do it in a coy way of his character is Carl Flossie, who's training Michael Bolton to basically do a song and dance number. And he has a cigarette in his mouth the entire time. and he's just verbally berating Bolton and the dancers, and it's fucking hilarious. Have you guys seen this?
No, but it's got unbelievable reviews.
It's technically the highest critic score. It's got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. You know, it's a small role.
I like that he has the cigarette hanging the whole time.
The whole time.
Why are we walking past the guitar? Just to fuck with the audience.
Fuck with them. How do you actually know punks will show up?
As a former smoker, that's impressive to have that much lung capacity screaming with a cigarette in his mouth. I would say that.
Yeah, man. As soon as I saw that clip forever ago when I watched it for the Maya episode, I was like, holy fuck, I gotta watch more of Michael Sheen stuff.
That's hilarious.
It's just a minute and a half, but I mean, he got his money's worth.
I love Michael Bolton. Well, I should have to change my name for that no talent ass clown.
He's the one who sucks.
I told those Fudge Packers I like Michael Bolton's music.
The full circle with more Ron Livingston. Look at us. Simpsons 2017. I saw the clip. It's basically him and Lizzie Kaplan playing their characters from Masters of Sex. The pop culture impact of that show is that their characters appear on The Simpsons. Pretty cool. Apostle 2018. It's a Netflix film that I had low expectations going into, but I rewatched it. Pretty darn good, even the second time.
Yeah, I really liked it.
Dan Stevens is the lead. Michael Sheen plays a cult leader on this little island that Dan Stevens went to try to save someone. Just good actors, and actually, I felt like it was a unique, compelling story. I don't know about you, Case.
Like kind of a genre bender, right? It kind of took on the early, like, not orthodox, but like the very zealous religious cults and religious factions, and it also had this very unexpected, like, supernatural and kind of
Earthy thing going on.
I thought it was also made really well in terms of like the styling.
I agree. And because it was early 20th century, it was 1905 was when it isolated island. So it had some vibes like The Witch, but not nearly as like intentionally dark as The Witch with Robert Eggers. So I recommend it.
For sure. This movie was filmed near his hometown, or in his hometown, and I believe it was filmed in like a park that he grew up across like the street from.
Okay.
Being basically a home court advantage for him in this movie. I bet was a really fun experience.
And then final saga or entry into the dating world of Michael Sheen is he had started dating Anna Lundberg in 2019, still with her, has had 2 children with her, and she's a Swedish actress. Seems to have settled down now, so he's got 3 kids with 2 different women. 2019, a movie that I don't think we've ever like substantively talked about, but just keeps coming up because people we cover keep showing up in it, is How to Build a Girl. He played Dr. Freud alongside Chris O'Dowd and Emma Thompson. The Good Fight plays Roland Blum. In that show, he was in 1 season of it, 7 episodes in 2019, alongside Gary Cole. And I watched some clips of it, and he plays a very eccentric lawyer that apparently was modeled off like a combo of Roy Cohn and Roger Stone.
Interesting.
Holy fuck, you guys, if you haven't seen it, you should check out, like, there's like a 10-minute thing of just, I think it's clipped in there, you can watch it, but it's 10 minutes of his character, and it almost makes me want to watch the show because his character is just off the walls nuts.
Cool.
Caught my eye. Another big Munson crossover, Doolittle 2020, alongside Craig Robinson, Rami Malek, Emma Thompson. He plays Dr. Mudfly, basically the nemesis to Dr. Doolittle in this one.
I had the pleasure of reviewing this one for the Rami Malek episode, I believe.
I remember that. But towards the end, the tail end of his career to modern day, this is where he's done a lot more television. So up until the point, he's done a lot of theater early in his career, then a lot of film. Now it's a lot of recurring characters. So between 2019 and 22, not including The Good Fight, he's done 5 other recurring character roles, including on Prodigal Son, Good Omens, Sandman. I know Good Omens is one that people tend to associate with him quite a bit in that Heaven and Hell show.
So when you guys said we were covering him, I was like, oh, I don't know who that is. And then I look him up, and this is a show that I had watched in its entirety only because my wife put it on one day, and we sat down and we watched the whole show in a day. It's very good, and he's great in it. He plays an angel named Azir Raphael, and he's supposed to be the angel who guards Earth from hell when the end of times comes. The person on hell's side's name's Crowley, and they end up just like kind of becoming friends throughout because they know of each other, and they end up becoming like best friends. And it's now like them realizing that they enjoy Earth, and they're like, oh, so we should probably just stop like the destruction of Earth since you and I like hanging out here. It's heavily implied that they're gay, but because they weren't put on Earth for reproductive reasons, they don't have those desires. But like in the book, because it's based on a book, I looked it up. In the book, it's like super duper clear that they're gay together, but in the show, it's not. But he's great in this. He's very funny. He finds out one of the reasons that he loves Earth so much is because of how delicious the food is compared to heaven. He owns an antique bookstore, and it's like, it's fun. I get to read about stuff I actually lived through since he's been alive, since the creation of man. They also do a bunch of funny things, like Francis McDormand plays God and Brian Cox is the devil. It's pretty good.
I've heard really good things about the show, so it's good to hear from somebody I like. You're not like a random critic online or something.
But the writing is funny and the actors are great.
I know, what is that, David Tennant that plays Crowley?
Yep.
And those two, I feel like, are two peas in a pod. I've seen them on interviews all over the place. I'm glad to hear. I'm glad that somebody has seen one of these shows that he's done recently, because he's done a bunch. But to kind of round things out, I mean, James alluded to him doing a lot of philanthropic work. The other thing I noted, looking into his background, he's an honorary fellow or has an honorary doctorate or something from 5 different universities. And he's narrated like 10 audiobooks throughout his career, too. So to kind of go into James's point, he's done so much by 2020. He's like, I'm just donating my money that I make now because I'm good. I'm chill. And he's done pretty well for himself. So we've reached the top of the mountain, and this is where Rigby takes us through some potential top performances.
From TV Overmind, which we've used before. It's actually his 5 best roles, and it's only film, and it's not numerically ranked. 5 movies.
When is it from?
It doesn't actually say. The fact that I agree with most on this list, I'm going to keep it.
Okay. All right. 5 roles.
I'm going to start out with 7 Days in Hell.
Nope.
Dang it.
That would have been fun.
This list sucks.
Fucking sucks. I'll go with the obvious one, Frost Nixon.
Yep.
Are there any Twilights on this list?
Please.
Nope.
Please no.
I'm going to say, is Tony Blair, are the 3 combined? Or does it point out a specific movie?
Believe it or not, there is no Tony Blair on this list.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah.
That opens up some possibilities, though. That's interesting. Okay.
Yep.
Unthinkable.
Nope.
Thinkable didn't make it. How about The Damned United? That's got to be on there.
Yes.
Okay, I agree. The top 5 are. Midnight in Paris make it?
Nope.
Okay, that's not as big of a role. It's not a lead. So I get that.
Michael Bolton's Big Sexy Valentine's Day special.
Oh, unfortunately, but after watching that possibly should be on there.
So this must have been made before 7 Days in Hell and Michael Bolton. Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it's an older list.
How about Music Within?
Nope.
Passengers.
Yes, Passengers.
Okay, good job with that.
Stop trying to get me to watch Passengers.
Rigby, of the other 2, how many of them are biopic? How many of them are real people versus fiction?
None.
None of them. So Underworld is one of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Alice in Wonderland.
Nope.
We're missing one, eh?
Yeah, this next one's a shocker, and that's just because his role is not that big in it.
Blood Diamond.
Blood Diamond, Craig.
What? No. Why would they do that?
They're trying to get on the good side of Michael Bay.
There are like 10 roles I'd pick over Blood Diamond from his career.
Maybe you need to rewatch Blood Diamond.
I did.
Maybe he had a bunch of like background roles like sneaking around that you didn't even notice before.
I'd pick Dirty Filthy Love. I'd pick Bright Young Things. I'd pick Heartlands.
That's my goal, Kyle. I gotta find stuff that keeps you on your toes, right?
Right.
No Tony Blair, but they picked Blood Diamond. Throw this list out. Throw this list.
No Tony Blair.
So if we had to create our own top 3, what would we put up? Frost Nixon 1.
Frost Nixon 1 for me, for sure.
Yeah.
Which I think you guys knew that.
Maybe Tony Blair 2, like the combo of the 3 roles.
I'd go Damn United 2, just because I really like that movie.
Yeah.
I think it's the fact that, I don't know, it's so impressive that he's played Tony Blair in 3 different things. That's like unheard of.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a huge Damn United fan, so I'll go 2, and then I'll do his performance in The Queen at number 3.
Yeah, I'd round my top 3 out with Blood Diamond.
Fuck off. So hard. It's hard to pick a top 3 because you've got Unthinkable, as an option there. You've got Frost Nixon, you've got the Tony Blair, you've got Dirty Filthy Love, you've got Music Within, you've got Heartlands. You can make a case for a bunch of Masters of Sex, obviously, is one big one there that no one talked about either. So
that might be his number 2, if we're being honest. Masters of Sex.
Yeah, considering the impact of it. So Munson Meter, what we do, we rate every actor on a scale of 0 to 100 based on a variety of factors. They could include longevity, project choice, pop culture impact, their acting range, awards footprint, any other talents they might have, personal life, comedic chops, box office success or lack thereof, and anything else that matters to us as Munsons. So this time we will start with Rigby.
Yeah, so I'm a big Michael Sheen fan. Obviously, his role in Frost Nixon, one of my favorites of the last 20 years, one of my favorite movies of the last 20 years. And yeah, we've talked a lot about the Tony Blair stuff, and just if you look at his theater background and, the plays he's been in, and obviously, when you get your start in theater, you're most likely have a pretty easy job of translating it to the film world. So, which he has done, and he's also in 30 Rock, and he's just a really enjoyable presence when he's on screen. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a huge fan of his, so he's going to get a high score for me. He's going to get an 83.
Wow,
it's a good score. This was a different experience for me than Kristen Schaal. I say Kristen Schaal, she is who I thought she was, and I did not let her off the hook. Michael Sheen, I did not know a ton about. I'd seen more than I thought I had, but I still hadn't dug into a lot of his British work. I fell in love with Michael Sheen by the time I was done prepping for this episode. I give him a lot of props for his career in British theater, starting his own production company, and all the awards recognition he's had. The success there can't be ignored. His dating history is bananas to me. I think that blew me away when I started to figure out who he's been dating over the years, because I was like, he's not a stereotypically like great looking guy, but he's a charismatic dude who clearly knows how to talk to women, and he's done very well on the dating side. So I get to give him cred there. His pop culture is interesting for me because it's limited here, because if you go to like Michael Shannon in the American landscape is who's going to pop up first when you do Google searches, when you do YouTube searches. But Michael Sheen is huge overseas, playing Tony Blair, playing all these Kenneth Williams, playing all these massive Brian Clough, all these massive like British people. It's clear his pop culture impact, if we were a British show, would be max, right? So I'm kind of like cutting the difference here because he's not as big here, but he obviously internationally has huge appeal. He's got the major roles in huge box office franchises like Underworld and Twilight, but he has supplemented that with a lot of indie films that we talked about that I really like too. And the fact he's narrated so much, making a career playing real life characters, and his little niche stuff in like 7 Days in Hell and the Michael Bolton special, like everything he does, he impressed the hell out of me. So I'm like you, Rigby. I'm giving him a pretty high score. I'm giving him an 84.
Hell yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Well, hey, don't speak too soon. Don't speak too soon.
All right, Case.
You guys have said a lot of the things that I do like about him. I'm not as big of a fan of him as you guys are. One of the things that has grown more and more important to me in my evaluation of these performers is their acting name recognition. Everybody that I told this to was like, Sheen, like Martin Sheen? I'm like, no, it's Michael Sheen. There's no relation. So it's very difficult to kind of place him. The name recognition for me is a little low. While I appreciated a lot of his movies and the roles that he takes on, they're not necessarily roles in films that resonate really with me. I would not have sought out The Apostle if I hadn't heard him in an interview and talking about the fact he's filming in his hometown and we're watching him for this episode. I definitely wouldn't have watched Resistance, both this one and the Jesse Eisenberg one. I do think he's super talented and I do enjoy his roles, but he's going to come up short with me only because it's just not in my wheelhouse of my interest. So I'm going to give him a 72.
James, round us out.
So I preface this with saying I didn't get to watch that many movies of his as I'm lying on my floor, slowly dying from breathing in mold spores. and so I will take out my agony on him, unfortunately. But the movies that I did see of his, I did enjoy. I think Frost Nixon is great. I didn't realize that I had seen Good Omens, and I thought he was very funny in that. I think he has the range. I agree with Case. I don't think the name recognition is there, but maybe that's just because we're Americans. He's like a really good person. I think his charity work is pretty wild. I appreciate someone who is realizing, like, you know what, 15 million is like, I'm pretty fucking rich. I got everything I want. I might as well just give everything from here on out to other people who need it. I think that's totally admirable. But unfortunately, like, the Underworld movies suck, the Twilight movies suck, and I unfortunately had seen those. And so when I looked these up, I was like, oh, this guy stinks. And I didn't realize how talented he was until way late in the game, and I had already only seen about 2 movies of his. So unfortunately, I will be giving him a 63.
Damn, Rigby, how does that make you feel?
It's a fair score. Can't criticize it. We don't score shame on this podcast.
We don't.
We all know that.
We say that.
Unless we are shaming Cam for throwing Haysbert 132.
Yeah, that's pretty egregious. Well, that's a gap right there. So that gives Michael Sheen a 75.5, which puts him in 30th place between Angelica Houston and Keith David.
Hold on, what place?
30th.
Yeah, that number sounds familiar.
Right on the dot. Right on the dot. I think James was doing the numbers there.
Bro, I
knew the averages.
I promise you I was not. I promise you I was not.
That's hilarious. That's his exact same box office score. 30.
Isn't that 2 episodes in a row where we did that? Or was it we did that with Turturro? I think we did with Turturro.
I think it was with Turturro.
Wow. I think this is a perfect example of Americans and Michael Sheen. Before, if I hadn't watched much of his stuff, I'd probably be in the low 70s. But I think the more you watch his stuff, it's almost like you get an extra point every time you watch a new project with him because you start to figure out how talented he is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not surprising to me, but the fact I watch so much, I'm like, holy shit, this guy is just so, and he can do anything. He can play any type of role.
I just find his presence to be very enjoyable. He's one of those guys that, like, you just get excited when you see him on screen.
I don't disagree with you. I just, not my wheelhouse.
James, what does he have coming?
So he's got a TV show called Best Interests coming out, and they won't let me look at what it's about on IMDb. So I said, nah, yo, you owe us money if you want to know more about this. He has a movie called Heart of Darkness, which is based on a novel. Captains a leaky steamboat up the River Congo in search of mysterious figures. It's him, James Norton, and Andrew Scott. It's looks like it might be animated, which is pretty cool. So it's just his voice. And then there's a movie called The Price of Admission, which Michelle Monaghan and Jeff Goldblum, where he plays a playwright in the middle of a midlife crisis.
We've got some things.
Yeah, I like Monaghan. She's really good.
Yeah, I think of the 3, I think that's what I'm most excited for. I like that cast a lot.
See when they hit. Next podcast is going to hit on September 22nd of 2022. Spooky number of 2s there. We're bringing back Chip Hessenflow. Chip!
Nice.
Oh, Brother Hessenflow.
We're going to throw a bunch of Chip's old war medals over the bridge on that episode. But he was here with us for James Marsden, Emma Thompson, and Matthew Broderick.
I love when Chip is on. He's great.
Oh, he's phenomenal.
He's got that great voice.
Oh, deep, sexy voice. The wheel selected between these 5 actors, and we'll talk a little bit about what we like, what we dislike. So we got Jake Gyllenhaal, Lucy Punch, Annie McDowell, Saoirse Ronan, and Margot Martindale.
Nice.
What do we think?
Gyllenhaal or
Margot's back in the list.
Weren't you guys dunking on Andy McDowell a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, dude, that's the one to avoid after
Yeah, we were.
her performance in the movie I was covering.
I've watched a couple movies with her that I absolutely despise. So, yeah.
I think Gyllenhaal or Ronan are the 2 favorites for me there.
Totally agree. Totally agree with Rigby. I think those 2 are great.
I want Margot. I want Margot Martindale. The money for it. We got to
get Warren.
She's so
back
good.
if we do Margot.
Yeah, you gotta get Warren back.
You got to force him to watch Margot Martindale stuff because she is awesome in everything that she does.
I want a book report on Margot Martindale.
If we did Ronan, you'd get to talk about Little Women again, James. So that's exciting.
Dude, She's amazing. Saoirse Ronan's an unbelievable actress. And you know what? She's just like gets nominated for Academy Awards, is young, and like you hear nothing bad about this girl.
And we talk about that movie that Stanley Tucci got nominated for an Oscar for too, where he kills her.
Lovely Bones.
The Lovely Bones.
Yes, Lovely Bones.
Yeah, I want Margot because I want to talk about Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. Plays the mom. I want to talk about a movie that came out a couple years ago on Prime that I really, really liked, Blow the Man Down. Big fan of that. And I'd just be really interested in digging into her life. Wouldn't be mad at shredding Annie McDowell a bunch more. I'm sure she has some other stinkers on her resume. She's got Groundhog Day, too.
Oh, that's right. She's in Groundhog Day.
Probably the big one for her, right?
Yep, that's the big one, I would say.
I don't know what else she have.
A lot of romantic comedies.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yep.
Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
Great movie. That is good.
Okay.
Forgot about that one.
I don't know if I know who Lucy Punch is.
We always talk about it being like the crazy blonde in every movie she's in.
Yeah, she's like...
Yes,
yeah,
now I remember you saying that because I remember saying I don't know who she is. That makes sense.
Yep. I'm Gyllenhaal or Martindale, personally. Those are my two picks. Saoirse I like, but she's young. I'd rather let her go do some other stuff before we cover her, personally. Who would Chip pick? He's done Marsden, Emma Thompson, and Matthew Broderick.
Gyllenhaal.
Owl.
Gyllenhaal, but also I was going to say, yeah, sneaky Andy McDowell.
All right. Well, Chip doesn't decide. We don't decide. Warren doesn't decide. The wheel decides. We'll see what happens.
We know Warren doesn't decide because he would definitely not decide Martindale.
Yeah, that's for sure. Wouldn't even be an option.
Well, we don't have a guest plug this week, so we'll see Chip next time. As always, you can find us on Twitter, Munsons at Movies. You can find us on Instagram, Munsons at the Movies. You can email us, munsonsatthemovies@gmail.com. Any final thoughts from Michael Sheen?
If you want your grandchildren to remember you as being something other than the dirty beggars you once were, you're going to have to work and change.
Munsons out.
All right, let's go. Thank you for the education, gentlemen. We've just received a PhD in stupidity. Doctor, shall we?
Hey, no bunts! No bunting!
Nobody gonna bunt or knock it to the fucking moon.